Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our continued coverage of World Cup 2021. Today was a pretty historic day because today there were no draws. Now that doesn't spoil much. The only spoiler is that you are going to have a fantastic recap and you are going to have a fantastic weekend, right? I hope you do. Now, this is the situation of the event. First things first, we have Alexandra Kostyniuk versus Tan Zhongyi. And we also have Alexandra Karyachkina taking on Anna Muschuk. I will serve you these two matchups, and then we will talk about the matchup Sergei Karjakin versus Sam Shankland to determine who is the last semifinalist to join in the men's section because the other three have been determined. Now, here we go. We have e4 from Alexandra Kostyniuk, and we have a Petrov defense. Now, this is a very solid weapon with the black pieces, and keep in mind these are classical chess games. Knight e5, d6, knight f3. And here, the two main lines for white are knight to c3, trying to go for this with bishop e3, bishop, etc., long castle, and generally an attack over here, or the move d4 right away. Alexander plays c4, which is a pretty rare sideline, and then plays d3, and then plays d4. And if her opponent were to play d5, we actually have an exchange French defense. e4, e6, d4, d5, takes, followed by c4. But her opponent plays bishop to e7 and allows d5. So instant replay, d3, d4, d5. Okay, interesting. This is not something that you would expect in a semifinal matchup of the Women's World Cup, but okay. Knight e5. And in this position, folks, I'm going to give you 10 guesses to guess what black played. And if I'm going to give you 10 guesses, you most likely will get it on the first guess, because why would I need to give you that many guesses, right? Yeah, black here completely inexplicably played the move h5. Now I understand that, Tan Zhongyi is a much better chess player than me. But what is that? You guys remember what are those? What is that? Anish Giri was staring at this as well during the commentary going, what? So white plays h3. Why does white play h3? h3 is actually a very useful move because if you just continue with knight c3, you never know what might end up on g4. It could be a bishop, it could be a knight. You know, h4, h3 is not completely outlandish either. So she plays h3, and the game proceeds as if nothing happened, as if black never played the move h5. a6, and here Alexandra Kostyniuk has an option. She can either castle short, play queen d2, and maybe castle long, or play a4, shutting down the queen side. And a4 has another idea. If black waits with b5 or anything on the queen side, you can play a5. And actually, a few moves later, after en passant, here to activate the slide scored bishop, she played a5. a5 is a really useful move. It's much more useful than h5 because you can plant on b6. Also, you've split the pawns, which means in all endgames they are very vulnerable. Castles, and knight a4. I mean, Alexander's doing typical, normal stuff. Knight to b6, very good. Here comes the queen to d6, and now the big question is, what are you going to do with the pawns in the center? Do you keep the tension? Do you take? Do you push? She opts to keep the tension for now. Queen b4 attacks this pawn. Bishop d4 just completely gives this pawn away. But if you take this pawn, I have rook a1. You now only can go here, and now I saw rook a4, and I did very much, in fact, like it, because the queen is borderline stuck. After here, and rook takes a6, white will maintain material balance and have a good advantage. So black opts not to enter this position, and instead we have dc4, rook e1, and bishop e6. Actually, if we back up for a moment, I think dc4 was a losing blunder after rook c4. I think the queen was getting trapped. For example, queen d6, rook c6, queen f4. I mean, white is just much better here. And if rook c4, queen a5, rook a4, the queen's just trapped. Like, literally, the queen is completely trapped. Yeah, wow. Okay, rook e1. And now rook takes e6, f takes e6, and this move queen e2, looking for queen e6. c4 is delicate, c6 is delicate, and a6 is delicate. So every pawn that black has is about to fall. Okay, there goes the first one. There goes the second one. Bishop takes h5. Now, when Zhongyi Tan played the move knight d5, that completely relinquished defense of this move. I don't exactly know what she missed, but to be honest, it's almost fitting that the pawn that's lost to give white an overwhelming advantage is the h-pawn that was moved very early, because now white can even wait to take the rook. It's just, like I said, every pawn falls. Queen e6, now you take, now you back up, And yeah, I mean, white is up 2 pawns and is just completely winning. There's not, I mean, I would love to provide you more, by the way, if anybody's wondering why that's not getting taken, right? I would love to provide you more in-depth commentary, but I really can't. White is up 2 pawns and black is not, and the game ends with knight to e5, after which this will simply collapse. It doesn't even really matter if this is mate. You can always play queen f7, takes. You can just get this endgame and you will win. Maybe not you, but Alexandra will win. Now, Alexandra makes it, she's the first finalist. She is the first finalist on the women's side. She has gained like 50 points in the classical portion. It is unreal. She slumped a little bit. That's why she's where she is now. And go look it up. Go look at Live 2700. Unbelievable run by her. And she is now the first finalist on the women's side. Okay, that takes me to game number 2. Garjachina versus Mushuk. And yeah, this one, guns blazing. Grunfeld, no nonsense with h5. Take. We got a mainline Grunfeld, bishop c4. Knight f3 is the other main line to delay the development, but usually you play bishop c4 because you want to put your knight on e2. Always bishop g4 will be met with f3. And oftentimes this bishop doesn't always find out. Wow. I should not drink so much Perrier before recaps because it's all coming back up. I'm just really excited. Anyway, queen a5 check, very normal stuff here. White oftentimes plays queen d2. Bishop d2 is also an option. Queen d2 will get you some sort of position that looks like this. And bishop d2 doesn't trade the queens at all. And d4 cannot be taken. Knight takes d4 is a tragic mistake because, first of all, I'm wondering if you just have the immediate bishop to b4. You do. And also knight d4, bishop d4, and then bishop b4. And bishop b5. No, bishop b4 right away, there's bishop c3 check. Oopsies. But there is bishop b5 check. You can castle. This king will never... Yeah, I mean, this is a terrible position. Yeah, very, very bad. So, castles, and everything that I said. Now, bishop to e6 is a wild move to play. First things first, that does not hang a piece. That is a fork, but you get forked yourself. What's the best way to answer getting forked? By forking them right back. Fork me and fork you. So, queen c5, bishop c1, and... Black voluntarily goes for a position where she has a really, really bad pawn structure. And the way that you offset the bad pawn structure is open lines, right? You have dynamics. Your pieces are all open. They've got open lines. They can pressure the opponent. And takes on d4, takes in rook d8. Now, the ensuing position a few moves later became what's known as a heavy piece endgame. So queen moves out of the way, offers a queen trade. And why is white offering a trade of queens? By the way, rook takes a4 is also possible. Well, here's why. Because white is offering a trade of queens because white has an advantage in structure. In all endgames, if you have a clump of pawns like this, it's really good. And you'll notice that black does not have a clump of pawns. Black has 4 separated pawns. This is a clump, but the other 2 are isolated. Also, black's king is cut off on the last rank. Also, black's rook on a8 is just an absolute moron. I mean, wow. Yeah, no good. Which is the reason why black chooses not to trade queens. So rook e1, and ultimately white does get the queen trade, and now needs to demonstrate a degree of technique. So first things first, pigs on the 7th, rook's on the 7th rank, or 2nd rank, I mean, undeniably powerful. Rook has to go here, and rook a7 pressures a5. Check and comes back. White plays the move rook c7. If you are trying to win an advantageous rook endgame or rook and some sort of other pieces endgame, it's good to trade a pair of rooks. The defending side needs to be very careful whether or not to trade rooks with you. This helps white a lot. Why? Watch and learn. Rook c5. Optimal positioning against the pawn. Now the black rook is absolutely paralyzed, and white just begins freely advancing into black's position. King g4 tickling over here. King goes to f6, white plays h4, utilizing a break to break apart the structure here, making more isolated weaknesses. Black plays e5, and white just shuts down all the moves. Black cannot move anymore, tries to move the rook comes right back. And by the way, it should be noted, rook a6 is possible, but there's some positions you actually prefer to do the lateral movement. And yeah, white wins this game by outflanking, and rook h7, rook h6 is unstoppable. And I mean, look, I understand I went through the game in like 4 minutes, but Garjachina literally melted her. That was an unbelievable game by white. White just played so well in dealing with this ultra dynamic variation. I don't know where the preparation is here. I'm not a Grunfeld expert, but in general, like when you deliberately damage your structure to the extent that black did in this game, your prep needs to be bulletproof. And knight takes d4 was, I think, the wrong way to do it, because this sort of forced this endgame, because now you knew that the bishops would get traded. I believe that instead of knight d4, black had to like double up on the c5, you know, with the rooks first, or queen a6 to go here. It's a very difficult position. And Karyachkina versus Kostyuk is the final that we expect on the women's side, both Russian players. And now, folks, it is time for the main event of the evening. Sam Shankland, Rocky Balboa, Sergei Karjakin, Ivan Drago. They are on the thumbnail for a reason. Oh, these gentlemen, I mean, they provided us quite a fight. I'm going to take a sip of my kombucha and then we will get started. Okay. Shankland won the first classical game. Karjakin struck back. Shankland goes back to the English. D5. Okay, we've got a Catalan. Transposition back to a Catalan. DC is a main line. Queen c2, a6, anticipating the move. Queen takes pawn. b5 attacks the queen, so a4. Preventing the move b5. We have bishop d7, and now this little zigzag technique. This happens a lot. Bishop comes out to g5, knight c3, and white gives away the dark square bishop because there's really nowhere else to put it. e3. Very solid. Now, the way white plays the Catalan is a balance. You either advance here, you advance in the center, or you even advance on the king side. Shankland fully commits the rook to going over here. Black plays the move a5. Now b4 is not a thing. So we have queen back to e2, bishop f3, bishop f3. And before I proceed, you should know that these games are 25-minute games. c6 prevents the move, knight to b5. Shankland has a nice position, but black is ultra solid. Rook back to d1, g6. Waiting move, h4, h5. Now we are playing a real game of chess that h4, h5 has occurred. Queen c2. Reroute the knight maybe to f4. King g2, a little patient. Okay, rook c1, queen b3. Inching forward, every move is like one square. Notice, like every move is like almost one square. Rook went two squares, one square, one square, one square, one square. Like you see how white is just very slowly, gradually improving the position. At some point, Shankland's gonna have to do something with his center pawns, but black actually goes first. He tries to liquidate. That's what this is called. One trade of rooks, and that's it. He doesn't trade the second pair because that would have equalized. e5. Knight comes into the middle, and now we begin to create a little bit of imbalance. Knight takes bishop, making it bishop versus knight with a degree of imbalance in the structure. Okay, what is going on? It is queen bishop 6 versus queen knight 6. Where's white's advantage? El alfil. Over here, the pressure. a5, a6, always useful. This queenside block can be broken apart. Queen c5, infiltrating. Queen d2, counterattack. Or is it? Is it a counterattack? Because if takes, my pawn is going. And that is exactly what happens. Knight to e6, bishop takes, uppercut, boom. Now, if you take on c6, it's over. Bang, here, d7, game over. If you don't take, it doesn't matter. I don't care, literally. So, b6, and Sam Shankland gets himself an extra pawn and does not look back. That d6 pawn, beautiful. And the American strikes again with the English. It is 2-1 Shankland. Karjakin now needs to stave off elimination. How's he going to do it? e4. Shankland. Ooh. Sam didn't like the French that he played yesterday. Goes to the Sicilian defense. Just playing the Najdorf for a draw, and he's into the semis. What's going to happen here? h3. This is the English attack. I'm sorry. Adams attack. Michael Adams is an Englishman, so I said English. It's the Adams attack. Knight c6, and this is the point. h3, g4, no cap. That is a professional chess term, no cap. For my older viewers, cap means I'm not lying. Little vocab lesson for y'all. Why does it mean that? Don't know. Cap. g6. Knight takes d4, queen d4, and we have long castle. Now, in this position, if black plays short castle, that is a reasonable looking move. But Sam Shankland is a flamboyant man. He's feeling himself. He plays bishop to e6 and queen a5. Now, the two moves together are very clear. He is making it seem like he's going to take the pawn. And Sergei's like, okay, so do it. And he's like, Okay, I will. Now, here's the thing. If you take on a2, this is completely idiotic by white. Like, there is no need to do that. That completely justifies everything that black is doing. But if you just leave these pieces here and, you know, continue to attack, you just get a winning position. Now, Karjakin did not go for the devastating g5 f6. He actually opted for this subtle move, bishop back to d2. You gotta tickle the queen. The bishop can't get away. So Shankland goes here. Karjakin's like, bro, you good? Like, I know you beat me a couple times, but respect me a little bit. Now your queen is under attack, and if your queen departs, like, back to d8 after knight f6, bishop f6, I mean, bro, thank you very much. Good luck saving this dude. Right? So takes. Now both queens are hanging, and they both fall. And when the dust settled, one man still has a bishop, and one man has no hope. And that one man is the same man, by the way. This bishop's not going anywhere. It cannot escape jail. You can go f6. I'll play b3. Good luck. You can't save the bishop. And, yeah, Shankland a little bit overextending here, ends up in a position where he is just down straight up a bishop. Like, one guy has one and one guy doesn't. That is as good as my commentary can be, but still very clean technique here from Karjakin to play f6, break apart the defense, win back the pawn. And you can lose a few pawns to gain a few pawns in endgames. You shouldn't lose all your pawns, but you can lose a few. It's 3 on 5, but he does have the bishop, defends everything. The king gives a hug to the rooks like, yo, let's do this. And the game went a little bit long. Look at this move. That's a damn fancy move. Transfers the bishop, gets the rook in, king vibing with all the pieces. And on move 40 in this position, on the verge of being mated, Shankland resigned, and it is now 2-2, 4 decisive games with the white pieces. So what happens now? We play 10-minute. But Karjakin gets white, because for the first half of the match, it's Shankland who has led. He gets the white pieces. So now we flip it. Karjakin now gets to play with the white pieces for the 10, and I believe the 5-minute portion. Okay. I'm getting a little deja vu. We sure that I didn't copy-paste the same game? Oh, Shankland goes back to the exact same line. Oh, whoa. Whoa. So it's actually, both players get 10 minutes between games. So this is what they did. Then they grabbed their laptops, and then they started, and they did their prep in between. I don't know, pooping or something, I don't know, in the toilet, I don't know. So Shankland last game, you know, played this, and I'm sure he had just briefly looked at something. But Karjakin surprises him. But Shankland responds with the best move, knight d7. I mean, that move's not super complicated. That pawn is frozen now. Just the gamut of a pawn. That's what this is. Queen d2. Queen a5. Knight d5. This is the whole point. Like, white just gives up a pawn, but says, hey, if you trade queens with me, I have looming threats of knight c7. I can play f4. I have a big lead in development. Also, I'm really handsome. Now, black here has to take the fight. He has to play queen a2. That threatens mate in 2 different ways. But queen b4 is a very tricky move. You've got a lot of threats if you're playing this with white. You've got knight c7 coming. Not easy for black to just get out of there because f4, like again, you know, winning this pawn over here doesn't really mean too much because white just gets a really massive initiative down the center. So queen d2 is what he played, and then he was forced to play king d8. King d8 is actually the only move because, for example, if you play the move rook b8, that actually saves nothing because I go here. Oops. And if you go back, then knight c7 all the same. So king d8. And this is the position. Karjakin has 6 pawns. Shankland has 7. But Karjakin's got the bishops, the knight, the rook. This rook is on the way. And Shankland plays a5. He does not deal with any of his problems. He plays the move a5. Why? Because he wants to play rook a6. That is how he decided to activate his pieces. But now bishop f1 and bishop b5. I mean, Sam saw this, clearly. But he was like, I don't really know what else to do. I mean, to be honest, it's a very tough position. Computer is actually saying a5 is black's second best move. And like after a4, it's saying that black's best move is now h5. It just wants black to play h5, a5, h5, and then figure it out. Make white commit 2 pawn moves, and then play like e6 or something. I mean, I don't know what kind of human is capable of playing that way, and this rook is now trapped, so Sam plays h5 now. Now, if you just take this rook, then your knight has to get out, and if it goes to c3, for example, you run into some problems. So Karjakin plays g5, and this rook is still trapped. h4. And it's just the case of a man who's trapped the other man's rook but doesn't want to take it. Okay, now he does. Knight c6, the bishop comes back to b6. And folks, as I always say when the dust settled, one man is winning. And that man is the Russian, Sergei Karjakin. He's got a great position. He's up in exchange. Black has not gotten two pieces going at all. I mean, he's under severe pressure. Now, how's Karjakin going to win this? By touching the weaknesses. If you go d5, I just take. You haven't guarded anything. So knight to d4, rook d3, bishop d7, and now knight d5 all the same, removing the defender of the pawn on d6 and disconnecting the bishop from the defense of the knight. And yeah, once d6 falls, the rest is just going straight down the middle. The two rooks and the bishop, king c7, and a nice move, bishop b6. And for the second game in a row, the doubled rooks and the bishop proved to be the demise of Sam Shankland. White has now won 5 games in this match out of 5. And Sam has the white pieces. So what is he going to do? He needs to win. Well, you might as well go back to what's worked. But here, rather than g3 or knight c3 or d4, Sam plays b3. Now, the thing about b3 is it's super non-committal. All you just tell to your opponent is you'd like to play bishop b2 at some point, and you'll notice that actually Sam is delaying it until now. But here's the problem. After bishop e7 and both sides castle, White has one and only one way to play this super non-confrontational system for any hope of an advantage. And that is playing the move d4. That is the only way. If White plays d3 and e4, the position can just lock. Or Black will play d5. And then I don't know what you're going to do, because if you give Black full control of the center, your position still sucks. Right? So, yeah, you can't play d3. There's no hope for advantage. You have to play d4. And then, when they take, you actually play queen d4. You say, why? That just allows knight c6. Yes. But then queen f4. And the queen is pretty good here. The queen is pretty comfortable on the f4 square. A move like knight h5 really doesn't scare you, because you just go back and actually this knight is just stupid, believe it or not. Like, you've baited Black into playing just a dumb move. Now that knight will just have to go back at some point. So d5 is what Karjakin chose. Now here, I actually have this position in my notes because I've been investigating, some double fianchetto setups. I only know the move rook d1. Like, Black plays d5, you might as well pin the pawn to the queen. And then Black will offer you a queen trade, because Black is like, dude, I don't know who you're trying to prove an advantage to. But knight c3 was the move that Shankland chose, and there's a lot of moves here, but Karjakin just chooses the super practical one. Pawn takes pawn. And basically, after this trade on c4, the structure is completely the same. 4, 4, 2, 2, same pieces on the board for both sides. How do you defeat your own reflection in the mirror? Well, I don't know. That's like a philosophical conversation. I'm talking about from the chess standpoint, considering Black is just going to be offering you trades. If you're trying to win a chess game, you can trade a little bit, but not like everything. I don't know why I just had to go for an accent there, but listen, bear with me. Knight to e5. Now, this move, when I look at it, I start salivating. Why? Because I'm like, take the knight and either play like f4, e5, or like you got some stuff going over here on the queen. I mean, Black like volunteered the queen for an attack. You can't go knight d5 because then queen b2. Or, by the way, even pawn takes, and then your queen's hanging. That's not good. But you can go here, queen back to e2, defending your bishop. And now you are very much threatening the move knight d5. Knight d5 wins the game for White, because this is protected. For example, queen to d6, knight f6 check, and the queen is lost. So that's, I mean, knight takes e5, and then going back to e2 is the way to go. But Sam does it this way, and allows Karjakin to take. Now Karjakin's queen is not in the middle of the board. After knight e5, bishop, right? After knight f3, bishop f3. Now bishop b4. I mean, Sergei is just trying to trade everything. He's like, bro, this guy cannot beat me if I trade the pieces. And Sam's like, let me get that bishop pair. But he could have considered here, perhaps, rather than doing that, playing something like, I don't know, knight b5, knight d4. It ain't pretty, but it's something. You gotta keep as many pieces on the board as possible. Still, Sam has legitimate chances to create some problems. First of all, he can just keep the bishop pair. Second of all, he can play this. That gives back the bishop pair, but it damages black's structure. That is, admittedly, a damaging of the structure. Sergei's like, let's go. I'm the Russian, not you. You can't beat me in endgames. E5. Sam can also consider a move like queen e3, looking for queen h6, but, I mean, king g7, also, like, the queen can just guard everything. He goes here, f takes e5, bishop b7, and this. Now, undeniably, white is better. Undeniably, because the only difference in the two positions is one guy controls the d-file and the structure of pawns. Like, white has more active pieces, and white has a better structure of pawns. And here, Sam probably should have played rook d4. Because rook f4 is possible, there's always opportunities to even double up on the g-file, do some serious damage, like for example, queen g5 here and rook g4. Very scary. Also check to try to force the king into a mating net. But he plays rook d7, setting up this, and one pawn move, the simplest of h6s, the coolest of h6s. How do you check the king? Which is why Sam needed to play queen g5 first, full danger levels, and then put the rook on d7 if he wanted something. Because now it's going to become a lot harder. So he goes in with the queen. Karjakin's like, bro, I'm good. Go ahead and take on a7. See what happens. Queen a7, queen b3, and not to mention rook c8, rook c1. Okay, so good luck. Queen goes back to c2, black plays a5. a4, and in this position, rook d8. And it started becoming clear Sam is in danger of not winning this game anymore. Because if you play rook c7, I come back, you can't stop this. You're going to have to trade rooks with me, you're not going to win that endgame. So he trades. And Sam now is in a situation where it's a draw, but he can't draw. So he tries to create a little bit of chances. He gives up the h-pawn. He just gives it up completely, but it's just not enough. And you're not going to win a queen endgame down one pawn. You are certainly not going to win a queen endgame down a pawn. And then with the queens coming off the board, or more, potentially even more pawns lost. And after queen f1 check, Sam Shankland resigned to Sergei Karjakin. And Karjakin moves on to play against Vladimir Fedoseev. And the other semifinal is Magnus Carlsen versus Jan-Krzysztof Duda. The incredible run of Shankland ends with two moments in the match where he had match point. He was up 1-0 and 2-1 versus Sergei, but super resilient play from Karjakin. What more to say? And tomorrow, there is a rest day, I believe. All the matchups get a rest day, I think. And Goryachkin versus Kostyniuk, Carlsen versus Duda, Fedoseev versus Karjakin. Wow. Folks, you made it this far in the recap. You know, I appreciate you very much. Take care. I will see you for the semis and the finals. Be awesome, and get out of here.